What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Doing things a little bit differently today. Doing a voiceover while I get this Doomsday built up at ACP. As you can see, we got the chassis rails right there. Beautiful silver carbon fiber. So the first things I like to do with the new build is just start with the links. I have a little trick that I do for assembling the links, makes it for the ball ends, and it makes it so much easier. Go ahead and empty this package out right here. Again, this is the Profit Doomsday. This is a 159 millimeter wheelbase carrier bearing setup. So as you can see, I put the ball end on the end of my 05 tool, and I just slide the O-ring over the wider flanged end, and then I flip it around, slide it through the link, and then put the ball end or the O-ring right over the ball end, and boom, in a few seconds it's installed. So I'll go ahead and get these all put together right here. So next up is the shocks. We have Endura 39 millimeter oil filled for the front, and then the 40 millimeter big bore for the rears. Go ahead and get these put installed and then move on from there. So now we are to the point where I can basically start assembling the chassis into what's called a slider. I got the skid right there, and I'm working on just trying to make sure I have it the right way. I actually had to get with the team chat to make sure I had the skid facing the correct way. Shout out to the boys over at Profit. Once I was able to get the orientation correct, I just started with the links, started with the rear, and then put the fronts on, and then I just install the skid from there. The front and rear links are pretty easy to install because your front links are going to just be a straight lower, and then your rear links for the lowers have a high swoop with a little jagged piece. It's kind of, once you look at a picture of how they go in, it's pretty well easy. And again, I'm using the LGRP gold hardware for all of the hardware in this rig. I believe it absolutely sets any rig off. Honestly, I think gold just goes with anything. So let's go ahead and get these links put on. So now that we have both the front and rear lower links installed, I'm going to work on getting the skid attached to the chassis itself. If you guys are using gold hardware on your Doomsday builds, everything for me worked very well for the lengths, except for the rear shocks. I could have switched out the ball end and just not used one that had the little built-in spacer on it, and I probably could have used the 10 mil, but I just ended up using the longer silver hardware I had. So right there I got the left side installed. Now I'm going to work on the right side here. Huge shout out to ACP for letting me just take up a table, set up my camera, well, phone, and get this video made. Got a nice little scenery back there with the rocks. It's always a good place to be. If you're in Michigan and you need somewhere to crawl local to the Genesee County, Shiawassee County area, hit up ACP right inside the Dordt Mall. Entrance is right in the main parking lot. You can't miss the ACP sign on the door. If you want to come run a comp, we'll get you in. If you don't think you fit in, we'll get you where you fit in, we promise. That's what we're about. So getting those last couple screws snugged up right now. And there we have it. That is the chassis with skid and lower links installed. Now from here what I'll do is move on to the carrier bearing setup. In Profit Designs, Kyle does supply the hardware for the carrier bearing, but I opted to use the gold hardware for this, of course, which I needed the 10 millimeter LGRP bolt out of there with the nut to sandwich the actual carrier bearing together. You'll want that output shaft facing the rear, at least that's what worked best for me. And then I used the 5 millimeter bolts to actually attach the carrier bearing to the chassis. And when I attach it to the chassis, I didn't actually tighten it all the way down at first. I kind of just snugged it up a little bit, so that way once I had the drive shafts installed, which I did not get installed in this video, I could kind of get it the angle where I need it to. There are slots rather than holes for where the carrier bearing mounts, and that will allow you to have a little bit of play and get it really set up how you want it. Okay, so now that we got the carrier bearing fully assembled, just go ahead and check in to make sure everything spins freely, minimal slop with the supplied washers. And then like I said before, we are just going to go ahead and get this snugged up in the chassis. No reason to crank it down just yet. And then after the carrier bearing is fully installed, we are going to move on to getting the rest of the links installed, which is the front and rear uppers. Okay, so now with the carrier bearing installed, we can move on to the rest of the links. We're going to start with the rear upper and then the front upper. The orientation is kind of strange looking at first, but your fronts are basically going to do an L with the long part facing up for motor clearance, and then the rears have a little hoop, or a hump I guess, that help clear the lower. So now with the links installed, we can move on to getting the transmission and motor setup installed. This is the Big Kid Tiny Truck icing drop-in. So this is his transmission with the mount and his motor. I will be pairing it with his 25 amp ESC, tuned up, ready to go already for that motor. For my radio and receiver combo, for anybody wondering, I am currently using the Radio Link, and it's been amazing. The micro receivers are 34 for 2 on Amazon, and I can get them to my doorstep in like 2 days. So it's hard to beat. The remote itself is a bit bulky, but you can pull the battery tray out and run a LiPo battery on it, like a FlySky GT5 or another remote similar. It's been super great for on a budget, and for those that know, it survived a fire. So there's that. Can't be all that bad. I'll continue to use it. Honestly, probably for all of my rigs. I currently have 9 rigs on the one remote, and it's been sweet taking stuff places. I just load up my crawlers and grab my remote and go. So now I'm just kind of doing a final little look over, making sure that I have that transmission tightened up all the way, making sure everything looks parallel. You don't want to tighten these too much because you can pull it down and your internal gear inside that transmission can rub on the skid, and that can create premature wear, especially on a brass gear setup. This isn't brass, but just in case. And there she is. That is a chassis with the motor, links, and skid installed. So far, everything has gone together super smooth. I haven't had any issues with the threads and the 3D printed stuff. All the tolerances in the carbon fiber is just on point. So now we are going to move on to the axles, starting with the rear axle, and then we will make our way to the front. These are the Mias ISO axles with the Profit Slant BOA mount. I am not going to run this 4-wheel steer. This will be a little drag axle tabletop killer. I love the Mias axles. They are the perfect all-around axle, especially the nylons. Throw a little bit of brass on the front paired with that nylon rear, and you're just sliding over rocks and making crazy breakovers. So now it's just the shocks. Getting the shocks installed is pretty simple. Like I said, this is going to be the staggered setup with the 39 front and 40mm rear. This is actually the same setup I'm running on my Gremlin. Alright, so there you have it, boys. Not much left to do besides get the roof and side panels mounted up, as well as the electronics, and go ahead and get the wheels mounted up right now. So I have already ran this a little bit. I know at the time of this filming I did not have drive shafts, but she is fully assembled. I did make a little bit of a comp run with it already, however it didn't go very well. I broke a servo horn and I didn't have a spare one on me, so I DNF'd that run. But I'm going to make a second part to this video on the test and tune. I feel there's maybe a couple tweaks I could make geometry wise, like with the link placement. So keep an eye out for video 2 in this series. Video 3 will be me taking it on its real maiden voyage for a comp run. I'm going to try and put it up against some of the heavy hitters we get out at ACP and see how she does. Be sure to like and subscribe if you guys like the video. Leave a comment. Tell me what you think about the build. I'm going to roll some shots here at the end for you. And she's looking good. Got everything mounted up. Drive shafts are in. So, hope you guys enjoy. And I will see you in the next one.